Hey folks, Jed Drenning here. Due to a technical snafu, as we were uploading our transfer portal episode, it got cut short on YouTube. So what we're going to do is break it into two parts. You probably already watched part one. If you didn't, it's right here on the YouTube page and on your audio platforms. But here is part two of The Portal Giveth. We hope you enjoy. Be an ear and tell an ear.
It looks like a little bit of durability too, by the way that some of these cats are built, to be honest with you, which will be nice because I expect us to lean heavy on the run next year, and we're going to need that durability. It'll be nice, a kid coming in familiar with what's going on. I mean, last year there was just so much newness, you know what I mean? And I know there's newness now with new players, but we've said it 1,000 times on this show, right? Football starts with the run, right? You gotta own up front, and I think Rich did a great job with getting Trick back, and obviously what we're doing in the running back community right now.
Well, speaking of which, looks like Trick got himself a new toy. Schuyler, we got some breaking news here on ITG.
We sure do. The Mountaineers offensive line are finally on the board, getting Devin Vass from Kansas State. Spent the first 2 years there kind of as a redshirt, then didn't play a whole bunch last year, but saw some action at right guard this year. He's okay against the run. Or in run blocking, he wasn't great or wasn't terrible. Just going off the quick look here at the PFF grades. But pretty steady there. And then pass protection, he didn't give up a sack all year. Now, he had some games where he didn't play all that well, but no sacks, so you got to like it. 6'6", 308 pounds. Again, more of that size, that strength. Rich was not playing around when he said he wanted to get bigger, faster, stronger. They're doing that here. And then, Jed, I don't know where you want to go next, but I can't help but keep talking about these bigger, longer, athletic guys. Prince Strawn out of USC, didn't play really a whole lot with the Trojans, really played most of his time with Boise State. And I don't know if he's going to be a Cam Vaughn replacement. I think you're still going to have to find, ways to replace that production in the aggregate. But Prince Strawn, huge target, bigger than Cam Vaughn was. And I think maybe the potential is maybe in the same ballpark if he gets it all together and understands this scheme right away.
Start with this. I'm impressed that you appropriately announced or pronounced Strawn. All right. Because that's a freaky spelling for strong. When you look at that, I had to YouTube that thing and watch some play-by-play to understand, okay, it's Strawn. It's not Strachan. But anyway, let's go to Kevin Bass. I do appreciate his frame and anything coming out of a Chris Kleiman concept, a Chris Kleiman offense, a Chris Kleiman scheme. I know he's all about the right things, all the way back to his North Dakota State days. They're coached well, that entire staff at K-State, the entire time they were there. So I know he's going to come in. And again, remember, one of the priorities when we're tapping into the portal, we're not looking for depth. We're looking for guys that are going to challenge to start. That's exactly what we're looking for. And I would expect Kevin Vass to be one of those types of guys that's pushing to be a starter. And if he's not, he's going to be right there on the fringe of it. We're trying to make that room better. Yes, we're on the board for the first time with an offensive lineman per se, but as we mentioned in the past show, I think the single biggest acquisition of the offseason obviously wasn't in the portal. It was Rick Trickett to coach that offensive line. And I would expect in the coming days, maybe even by the time this thing, publishes, you're going to see a bit of a run on some offensive linemen. We're not out of the offensive line business quite yet from a portal standpoint. But let's jump back to Prince Strawn and look at what he does. First of all, from the Bahamas, that's always interesting to me when you hear, kids with stories like that. But large frame, 6'5", 215. Had a situation where he spent a couple years at Boise State, was very productive, made the types of contested catches that you would hope for with that type of frame. And not only that, but when you take a deep dive into critical down and distance situations, one of the things I always look to is, all right, how often are you getting the football on third down? And when you get it, how often are you moving the chains? We had 10 catches on a transition downs, third and fourth down. All 10, he moved the chains. So that kind of speaks to some things right there. Now, he transferred out Again, somebody flashed some money at him and an opportunity at a bigger school and a bigger platform in the Big Ten at USC to play for Lincoln Riley. He ends up going down there, and that Trojans receiving core. First, it starts with Mekhi Lemon, who's a stud. Kid had 79 catches this year. He's a future long-term NFL guy. Jacoby Lane turned out to be their big-bodied guy. He was their 6'4" guy making plays. And then they had a freshman in the mix, Tanuk Hines, that they kind of come in and stole the show early and often. And that kind of rounded out their top three. This is a kid that was averaging 16, 17 yards a catch, Hines was. So Strawn never really found his place in that rotation. So head back on the swivel, looking for a better fit, looking for a better opportunity. So we land him, and I think he's a nice fit with some of the other names that we're going to talk about from an addition standpoint in the receiver room.
Yeah, you got DJ Eps also coming from Troy. Looks like he could be a vertical threat. I know we'll get to the quarterback here in a minute and his brother, of course, but the last 24, 36 hours or so, at least as we're taping, they got the Bowling Green edge rusher David Afago and then Malachi Hood, linebacker from Illinois. So some interesting bodies there. Again, big size. I don't have their height and weight here listed for some reason. I thought I did, but they're pretty big bodies as well. But also, don't forget too, the first transfer portal commit was a guy by the name of Will LeBlanc from Division II Texas Permian Basin. And look, he's very young. He's got a long ways to go, but I don't know that I'm just throwing him off to the side as that he's never going to work here. I think there's a reason why they were after him early. Wisconsin was also in the mix, some others as well. So look, I know a lot of people get upset when they see Division II, JUCOs, FCS, whatever the case may be. Give this kid a chance. I think you're going to like him.
Okay, let's go through this, Schuyler. You mentioned Hood, you mentioned Epps, you mentioned LeBlanc, and who else did you mention there? Patterson, or who'd you go with?
Afogho, David Afogho from
Okay,
Bowling
I'll
Green.
bounce back to that. He's on the other side of my sheet here. Okay. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's start with Epps. 6'1", buck 85. He's an Alabama kid, stayed home local at Troy. I haven't asked the staff, but these are exactly the types of guys that I'm quite certain they had a history with them from a recruiting standpoint. Yep. So there was somewhat of a relationship formed all there already. So they kind of started this on second base as opposed to, from scratch. That's what you're looking at with this kid. He led Troy with 47 catches. Now, a lot of that was out wide. They moved him around some from a matchup standpoint, which I'll talk about here in a second, and put him in the slot. But again, for that frame, think about it, 6'1", buck 85, so you're big enough to get physical, especially if you move into the slot, even though most of his reps came out wide. But he logged more snaps in the slot in some of his biggest games. Now, if you remember, those were against Texas State and Georgia State. Now, if you remember, the OC for Troy last year was Sean Reagan, who was formerly with Neal at West Virginia as his quarterback coach. One of the things that Sean did was he moved Epps around trying to get better or more favorable matchups, and it really worked out well in that Texas State game, that Georgia State game. He had like 10 catches in one game, 8 catches in the other, over 100 yards in both. So normally he was on the perimeter, but they saw an opportunity, moved him in. He's mid 4-5 type guy, 4-5-ish. And also he brings some things to bear from a special team standpoint. He's a solid kickoff return man too. So, outside the rubric of what you're going to talk about as a receiver, there's some other things that he can bring. And let's go with a Fogo out of Bowling Green. Don't get too caught up. Sometimes what will happen is, again, go back to the frame first. We talk about their after length, wingspan, size. This kid is 6'3", 245. So he has that length and that wingspan that you look for in a pass rusher and an edge guy. You want to occupy space. You want to impact plays. Even when you're not getting home to the quarterback, you want batted balls and things like that. And that's what you get with him. So let's look at what he did from a production standpoint. You might look at it and say, yeah, he had almost 40 tackles. Okay. Well, that's not necessarily what you're asking your edge guy to do, but he had 4 TFLs and 2.5 sacks. You're like, wait a minute, 2.5 sacks. I thought you're bringing him in as an edge, but Schuyler, he had 27 pressures. And
that would have led West Virginia.
Yes, he was absolutely would have. So he was impacting plays, and that's what you got to see just beyond the box score, the stat line. You got to study a little bit of tape, look a little deeper, and see the types of things or the type of impact that some of these guys are in fact having. Malachi Hood, you talked about him, transfer out of Illinois. Another guy, 6'2", 235, has some length to him. 40 plus tackles, 2.5 TFLs. Here's what's interesting to me. He led the Illini linebackers with 20 stops. Now, remember, a stop constitutes a failure for the offense. That's the way PFF defines that metric. So he's a secure tackler. He only missed 5 tackles in 500 plus career snaps at Illinois. And that's exactly what you want out of that room. If you get near the football, you want it to result with a guy on the ground. And that's what you're going to get with Malachi Hood. You have length. I think his football IQ is pretty high based on the way he plays. So, yes, he'll impact some things at the line of scrimmage, sometimes behind the line of scrimmage. So I think he's a great addition to that linebacker room. And you close with LeBlanc. The thing that stands out is the size of the frame, 6'4", 300, the things you can't coach. So he has an opportunity immediately there. If you have a skill set attached to that kind of size, you're going to be able to occupy space on the interior of a defensive line, clog gaps, demand double teams. He had 30 plus tackles as an interior defensive line. That doesn't happen by itself. He had 5 TFLs. He had 4 quarterback hurries, but again, just because you're playing at a small level, I mean, we're sitting here with a podcast. The guy played in the NFL after being a D3 standout in Owen Schmitt. Don't sleep on these guys that play small college football. There are a ton of great football players playing at the small college level. The difference is today, whereas it used to be the small college guys, whether it was Texas A&M Kingsville producing a Darrell Green, who was a longtime Pro Bowler for the Redskins, instead of NFL teams smoking them out after they graduate and play 4 years at these small schools, now it's power conference teams smoking them out, IDing them early and bringing them on, just like the NFL used to do it. Now teams like West Virginia and other power conference teams are doing it. And let's hope that's the case with Will LeBlanc, because I know they have been thoroughly vetted, closely studied, and they've looked at his tape and liked what they saw. And Owen, that's a big dude to be adding to your defensive rotation. We've had some guys that we kind of hoped, I thought, might stick around in that D line and ended up in the portal anyway. That's the modern nature of doing business. But we're going to have to get some more studs in there as well, and some guys with some size. And I like that kid's frame.
Yeah, I mean, size is the name of the game, and Jed, talking about just the lower levels, I feel like that's almost, uh, you know, a lot of kids get discouraged, or used to, anyways, about playing a lower division football. But in my opinion, it's more self accountability, same passion. Those kids, you know, maybe coming out of high school, there might have been just maybe a little too short or maybe a step slower, but given that year development at that school are now at stuff and been able to put out good film. And, film doesn't lie, right? That's a great way to get evaluated. And in today's world with the connection of the internet and being able to literally like process thousands of athletes film on a whim just off of a program, anything's possible.
Relative. In other words, somebody might look at it and say, "We'll take Owen Schmitt. You ran for 1,000 yards at a Division III school. Yeah, behind a Division III offensive line." Right. So
Yeah.
it's not like you and your boys went up there and just picked on these small college kids. No,
Yeah.
it's all relative. So if a kid stands out on tape, he stands out on tape for a reason. And if you know how to evaluate, if you know what you're looking for, you'll be able to dial in and tell those types of kids, irrespective of the type of competition they're playing in. I mean, you can tell something no matter who you're playing against. If you're within the confines of a competitive atmosphere, competitive game, you can tell something about a kid no matter what level of competition he's performing at or against. And that's what you look at when you see a guy like a D2 kid make the jump. The only question I have is, out of Permian Basin, maybe he's a fan of Landman 2 with Billy Bob Thornton on there. But, not enough in Tech is the other thing. It's, maybe we had to sneak one behind Tech out of their backyard. But Sky, we got a couple left here, and these are some big ones.
Yeah, you got the quarterback and defensive back duo in Michael Hawkins and Malik Hawkins, son of Michael Hawkins Sr., who played in the NFL a little bit, also at Oklahoma. So we'll talk about them. And then linebacker Isaiah Thomas out of UNLV. You have G. Latimer. I've tried to pronounce his name, but I think it's actually Jameer Latimer is how you say it, which is, of course, Amari Latimer's brother. And
siblings, baby.
Andrew
G.
Paldrell. Yeah, they call him G to make it easier. And then Andrew Paldrell, also out of UNLV.
Give me the second UNLV kid, Schuyler.
Andrew Paldrell. cornerback.
Okay. Don't have him yet. I don't. But you said Thomas. I think you were talking about Isaiah Patterson, right?
Yeah, Patterson.
Okay. Okay, I didn't see that. I was at my kid's basketball game. Uh, Boy, he lost a heartbreaker, 26-24 for junior high basketball. His first JV start, but that was a tough one. But anyway, Isaiah Patterson, what have we been talking about? What's the theme that keeps recurring with these defensive players? Size, length, frame. Isaiah Patterson, out of Vancouver, by the way. You're literally getting him from all over the fruited plain and beyond. 6'4", 235 pounds. Another 6'4" linebacker. Big man.
Former
So
Bruin.
there's going to be some things that Zach Alley can do. And that's all I see is I see Zach Alley, once he gets his mitts on guys like this and forges them into what he wants them to be within the confines of his scheme and his defense, I'm really excited about those possibilities. But, I'll jump next to G. Latimer. G. Latimer is a guy that obviously spent a couple years at Jack State before going to Wisconsin. And one of the conversations I remember having is when Drew Fabianich was still here as our GM. I remember having a conversation with him because he was evaluating all these kids all over the country, right? And one of the things he told me about the Latimer kid who was at Jack State at the time, he's like, Jed, we can't afford him. He's like, he's an NFL guy. He said, we're not going to be in the market for that. We're not going to be in the running. He said, we can't afford it. I mean, that was from a talent standpoint. He was just being realistic where things stood a couple years ago, or even a year ago. But before rev share and everything else. So when you look at what G. Latimer is, 5'10", 191 pounds, he's a Georgia kid out of Fairburn. Now, what did he do at Wisconsin a year ago? I'll start with that, and then I'll hit on some of what he did at Jack State, which his role kind of shifted a little bit at Jack State. If you remember, he was only with Zach Alley for 1 year at Jack State, but he was there for 2 total. So at Wisconsin, 84% of his snaps were spent at nickel corner over the slot, which he did some of that at Jack State, but not nearly as much as he did at Wisconsin. Now, there were times they recognized his physicality. We talked earlier about the physicality of a box safety and what that means to a defense. Let's remind people what a box safety, in fact, is. A box safety is a safety that you can move down towards the line of scrimmage and even assign him a run fit against the opposing offense's run game. So he's physical enough that you can trust him to do those types of things and be a downhill type player. So he's going to play at or near the box and be part of that defensive configuration against more physical run-oriented teams, which is what Wisconsin did when they played Alabama. He had his most snaps as a box safety were 15 snaps against Alabama because they recognized what Alabama was going to try and do. They rarely used him on the perimeter as a true outside corner. So now let's go back to what things looked like for him at Jack State. He was there 2 years with Rich, 1 year with Zach. In 2024, if you remember, Zach had already left to join the staff at Oklahoma with Brent Venables. The defensive coordinator at Jack State was Luke Olson. And he asked some different types of things from G. Latimer. 62% of the time, he was out wide. Yes, he was locked on somebody on the perimeter, be it an X, be it a Z. And the way that he used him from a slot standpoint, it was more situational. Yes, there were a handful of reps here and there, but they kind of picked their spots when they moved him in there. But there were also many times, that he was also involved in run fits and blitzes as a box safety. Now let's jump back to his first year, his freshman year, coming out of high school football in Georgia that he spent with Zach Alley at Jack State. He's played 3 years of college football. Guys, his best year was with Zach Alley as a freshman at Jack State. 75% of the time, he was out wide as a corner. 15% of the time, he was in the slot, locked down as a nickelback. And if you think back, his highest against South Carolina, that big game where they almost upset the South Carolina Gamecocks going into Williams-Brice Stadium. And they had that game won. Next thing you know, a pick six. They're driving to take the lead. They throw a pick six and lose the game. Well, this was a game where G. Latimer was their highest graded defender. He's a very secure tackler. He's a guy that has the skill set and the versatility to allow you to do a lot of different things with him. And when I think back to, he was just a young pup, a freshman, when Zach Alley was doing these things with him the first time. So I can only imagine or try to envision the way Zach might use him this time around. He's the type of guy that if you want to, you can throw him out on the perimeter and say, hey, you're one of my lockdown guys. I'm going to trust you in space against some of their more dangerous pass catchers and weapons. Or if the situation deems and calls for it, you're going to bring him in and say, smack that guy in the mouth, put your face in the fan, and make some things happen downhill because we got to plug the run game. So that's what I see with G. Latimer. And I think he is a great addition out of Wisconsin. And that was just as heartbreaking when we stole his brother, by the way, Amari Latimer, who was supposed to be the cornerstone of this Wisconsin recruiting class as the running back. When we landed him, because that's one of the reasons Wisconsin all along thought they were going to get Amari Latimer. His brother was already up there, but little did they know it was going to get flipped on him, and both of them would land at West Virginia. So let's dance from that back into the two names that everybody wants to talk about, and that's the brothers. You talked about it, Schuyler. Their dad not only played at Oklahoma, but he played for Oklahoma and a Venables defensive staff. I mean, he was a 5th-round draft pick by the Packers in the early 2000s, spent some time in and out of the NFL, a talented guy. So Oklahoma kind of felt they might have had the inside track when they were recruiting these kids coming out of Texas, coming out of the Frisco area. So let's start with Malik Hawkins, then we'll close with the quarterback. Malik Hawkins didn't play a whole lot, so you have to revert back to some of his high school tape, but a guy with size, who can play on the perimeter. He's pushing 190 pounds. He's 6 foot. He has enough length. He was a Rivals 4-star. So, I mean, he was highly regarded coming out of high school, and it was a big get for Oklahoma. I mean, they were all abuzz about it when they landed him as part of that recruiting class a couple of years ago. In high school, he was very physical. He's a sticky player on the perimeter. He has man-to-man coverage skills. So these are the types of things you would expect who's the offspring and the son of a former NFL defensive back. He plays that brand of football. He plays like a coach's kid, in this case, a player's kid. But I think he's going to bring a lot of potential, and Zach Alley can do a lot of things with him. But when you look at the quarterback, and this is what everybody's going to want to talk about, Michael Hawkins Jr., interesting situation in the couple seasons that he spent at Oklahoma. First, let's start with this. He is a legitimate dual threat. He's not a run first, run second, and then throw it guy. He's a legitimate, balanced quarterback who can throw it and run it. He just happens to be more dynamic than many when he does decide to tuck it and go. 6'1", 206, so he has enough size and durability to take a little bit of beating, which I'll talk about a couple of years ago. He had to experience and endure some of that at Oklahoma. Actually, Rivals had him coming out of high school as the number 2 ranked dual threat quarterback in the entire country coming out of Emerson High School in Frisco. So he was really highly regarded. And this was a coup for Oklahoma to land this guy. So when they did so a couple years ago, he was almost immediately inserted. Over the course of 2 seasons, he played 9 games, hit over 60% of his throws. He ended up throwing for almost 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns against a couple picks, pushed the football vertically quite a bit. But one of the things that I looked at, in those 2 years, he was sacked 19 times and he scrambled 27 times. Because when you watch his tape, and we're going to get much more thorough and knee-deep on the evaluation of some of these guys, more specifically Hawkins, as the offseason continues. We'll look at some of his tape and share it with some people, some of our viewers and some of the fans. But sacked 19 times, scrambled 27 times. So what that means is, guys, on 1 out of every 4 of his dropbacks at Oklahoma, he was either sacked or scrambled. Now, part of that you can attribute to the fact that Oklahoma offensive line a couple years ago was wretched. This was when Zach Alley was coaching the defense in Oklahoma. He had to work on the defensive side of the football against an offensive line that couldn't do anything to help that defense out, playing keep away or anything. They surrendered the most sacks in college football that year with 50. So it's no wonder that he hit the deck as many times as he did when he was at Oklahoma, but he's a smooth operator. He's a smart kid, makes sound decisions. There's a lot of big plays. It might be somewhat limited time in his 2 years in those 9 games when you look at it, but he had some marquee moments, whether it was on the road. He did some great things against Auburn and that win that they had there a couple years ago. Make some things happen against some high-level competition. Don't be getting him confused as a guy who can run it and only run it, and then in situations that are desperate, throw the football. That's not the case. So he can do both, and he can do both well. That candle burns brightly at both ends. So I think there is tremendous potential in terms of what he can do. And Rich is all about fostering competition. Iron makes iron stronger, right? And if you put him into the same room as Scotty Fox, I am terribly excited about what those guys are going to do as far as pushing each other. Because, Owen, you've been in those type of competitive rooms, whether it was in college, whether it was the NFL with some of the guys you played with there in the running back room and the fullback room. And when you got a guy behind you that if you blink, he's going to steal a couple reps from you. That's going to be the case with Michael Hawkins, with Scotty Fox. That's what you're looking at. You want that kind of competitive environment and competitive fire in every single room on your football team, offensively, defensively, special teams. So to get that kind of thing dialed up at the quarterback spot says so much.
Yeah, and you got to bring in that kind of competition. I mean, that's just, you're not gonna get a 1-star that's pushing a 5-star. I mean, and I'm not saying that as far as the guys that we have in our room or whatnot, but you talent pushes talent. And that's just the way it goes. And honestly, in today's age, if you don't have a competitive room, what are you setting up? You know what I mean? You got to have hungry guys in there. Otherwise, that nobody's going to get the work done. And it's got to be done at a high level. And there's nothing worse. And I'm not even going to say worse. I'm just saying having that competition behind you or in front of you, for the guy who's behind you, it's a great thing, right? You're striving to be that. And the guy ahead, right? You always have that guy breathing over your shoulder, which is a good push. And those days you get lackadaisical, right? That stuff is what helps push through that and get to the other side.
Well, I've always wondered. I remember back to when I first transferred into Glenville, I had to beat out the incumbent. Rich wasn't going to hand me the job, right? Nor should he have. I had to earn the starting job. And it wasn't easy because they had a pretty salty quarterback returning from the season before in Mike Keller. He's now a college head coach. But Mike was a very heads up guy, very smart guy, football IQ guy, and made a lot of sound decisions. Always put the football in the right spot. And I've often wondered, I ended up winning the job. Rich told us literally 2 days before the opener that I was going to be the starter. But I've reflected on that through the years. I've wondered, I know Mike made me so much better because I had to be to beat him out. I just had to be to have an opportunity to win that job over him. I had to be better. And I've wondered, how long might it have taken me if Mike Keller wasn't in that room pushing me every single. I was always afraid he can't watch more tape than me because Mike likes to eat tape, man. He's like me. I'm not going to let him watch more tape than me. And I knew he was trying. Boy, he's going to stay after practice and take some extra reps. Well, I'm not letting him take reps that I'm not taking. I mean, that's what you do is you push each other. So I reflected on that, and I've often wondered how much longer might it have taken me to reach the point that I reached early if Mike Keller wasn't involved pushing me? Would it have been 5 games into the season, 3 games into the season? Before I reached the point that I reached before the first game of the season because of Mike Keller and that competition. So I like the way you said that. You have to have that competition, and that is exactly what you need to sharpen you as an athlete. And when I look at what's going to happen in this quarterback room, I'm really excited about it because I know we have multiple talented kids in there. They're going to push each other, and I think we're going to get the best version of each of them.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what we're trying to do in today's age, where you need to develop literally year after year, but within just that window, you're not getting the 4-year span anymore. So you're getting these high level competitive guys, and hey, it's about producing. Today's game is about producing. It's not, hey, well, I'll produce in the next 2 or 3 years. It's about coming in and literally producing now. If you want to play, if you want the bag, you got to do that. So I think Rich and the staff definitely are on track, especially for this quarterback room for next season.
And as we've seen recently, gentlemen, you need depth everywhere because you are always 1 or 2 injuries away from calling up that next guy. So, yeah, competition always needed, depth always needed, and hopefully now we are much closer to accomplishing both. Will that do it, gentlemen? Is that it? Is that how we close it down?
The only thing we haven't mentioned, and it's not because we're trying to obscure things, we want to talk about the guys we're adding, but there's some guys that we were discussing this off the air. We lose track of who's entered the portal since we last aired an episode. Now we know Ben Bogle has, Curtis Jones has, from some names that people might pay attention to, but I think Rodney might have even had Gallagher since we were discussing that. We don't remember
we couldn't remember if we had talked about that.
We don't know, but yeah, it's again, this is like free agencies for your favorite free agents for your favorite NFL team. There's no animosity. If they think there's a better fit, whether they're from West Virginia or they're from somewhere else, Yes, I'd love to keep the homegrown kids here. Of course I would, especially the contributors like Curtis Jones. Sometimes it doesn't work out, sometimes it does. And that's the nature of the modern game. And it doesn't mean you have to like it. A lot of people don't like it at all. And eventually it will settle into some sort of normal, some sort of new normal that won't be as catastrophic and crazy as this. I don't know when that is. I can't make guarantees, but it will stabilize at some point because it has to. This is unsustainable. The crazy things that we talked about at the top of the show that are happening can't continue. I don't want to continue to lose West Virginia kids because somebody out of the 130 plus teams that are suitors might offer them a better package than we do. I don't want that to happen, but sometimes it's going to in an open market. And I don't like to see it, but that doesn't mean I'm going to hold anything against the kid. You just want to retain what you can and try and win football games.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Wes, you guys, how about the breath of fresh air in the playoffs this year? I mean,
finally,
it's been some good football. I mean, I'm going to say this right now. I'm going to give University of Wisconsin River Falls
I was going to say, I was waiting for
Sunday.
this.
Ooh,
Hey,
shout out.
we were at the game. Caleb Blaha, their quarterback, he is as advertised. Ended up surpassing Joe Burrow's season yards record in the game. Great game in Canton. Beautiful facility. Got to go with the fam. Took the boys to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. D2, a banger in Nashville. I mean, if you've seen that one. So it's been a lovely, fresh playoff season, and it's been enjoyable.
From the South has won these games. I was like, my buddy watched the FCS game the other night. I didn't even see it because I was working. And he texted me after the game. He's like, "Did you watch that game? It's one of the best games I've ever seen. It was the FCS championship game with Montana State." So, great point, Owen. I mean, there's been some high quality football. We're so used to these Southern teams kind of making a run, but that's not been the case. It's been a lot of Midwestern teams, Montana State, and even in the national playoffs. When you look at the Final Four, the last four standing, look, the SEC has one chance left. And that is they're certainly not rudderless. They're a lean kidless.
What a shame.
Ole Miss. Yeah. They have one team left. So are we going to see, guys, the third consecutive year that we have a national championship without an SEC team in it? There has been a changing of the guard. Period.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah. And if you look,
there's
guys,
no more refuting it.
If you look, Oregon and Indiana, neither has ever won a national championship. One of those teams is at least going to go and have a chance. Ole Miss, that's one of those, like, they'll tell you they won one. It's not actually recognized type whatever. Okay. Even if they want to claim that one, it was like 1960. So it's been a long, long time ago. And then, obviously Miami has a crazy rich history, but it's been 20 years since they've been that program. So really is some fresh blood. We've got Thursday, Friday, college football playoff semifinals, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, NFL playoff wild card round. You forget Christmas. Forget Christmas. This is the most wonderful time of the year.
If Miami continues on this historic run, I mean, who saw them going into College Station and knocking off A&M in that rock fight? Who saw them continuing with the upset they pulled last week? So they're on this magical run, and it just seems like they're somewhat ordained. We're going to find out because Ole Miss kind of feels like they're beating some of the odds as well, losing their coach and all that. But if Miami continues and shocks the world and wins two more, which I'm not saying that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. Does our guy Shannon Dawson fill one of these jobs?
He might.
His name's going to be coming up a lot.
Michael Irvin might fill one of these jobs if Miami wins the national championship. Take his belt to his introductory press conference.
Who's the nun? The sister for March Madness?
Sister Jean.
Sister Jean.
Yeah, Sister Jean. Somebody said Michael Irvin's the Sister Jean of the college football playoffs.
Yeah, although I got to think Michael Irvin spent a little bit less time sober in his life than Sister Jean has, all right? But that's all I'll say there, bro.
And don't forget, too, Saturday is also Bill Self's annual trip to Morgantown where he flies back to Kansas with a big L on his forehead. So,
over Cincy, too, yeah.
That's right. Got our first Big 12 win for Ross Hodge. Don't call him Hodge at the Coliseum on Tuesday night. Let's keep it rolling. Let's win some games. But that will do it for this edition of In the Gun, and we'll continue to keep you updated on all this portal happenings, moving and shaking. We've got a bunch of other fun stuff lined up for the offseason that will be coming your way shortly, including more of Jed's lovely ITG shorts. But for now, we say goodbye. So for the co-host, producer, Mr. Do-It-All, Schuyler Callihan, the barbecuing, sharp-dressing beer truck, Big O, and the signal caller, Jed Drenning, I'm Wes Uhler. Take care, everybody. And the one thing we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. This is the part where I should say take care, and we'll talk to you soon. You've been In the Gun.
ITG.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback,
be sure to follow us on X at In the Gun Podcast.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.